Welcome back to the shop. So today we're going to swap out this tired old 1406 Edelbrock that we got on the 71 C10, and we're going to install this brand new 1906 AVS2. Looks pretty nice. So why are we making the swap? Well, this old 1406 was used when I got it. It was probably about 5 years old. And it's been on this truck for almost 10 years now. So it's getting a bit tired. I had the truck running here the other day and it's not quite as smooth as usual. So I think this one's probably due for a rebuild. So I'm gonna yank this off, upgrade to the AVS2. And this one here is probably gonna go and live on the 68 F100. As soon as I can track down a 4-wheel intake for that. Now I've run 1406s before. I've always been pretty happy with them. But I've been told that the AVS2 is a step up. These ones have the annular boosters in them and apparently slightly better throttle response. So we'll give it a go. It was only a few bucks more than the regular 1406. And otherwise they are quite similar. This one does have the adjustable air door in the back, but other than that, tuning and adjustment is pretty well the same as the other one. You can change your metering rods and step up springs here, which is one of the big bonuses to running the Edelbrock. They're quick and easy to tune. All right, so with these on the bench here, you can see they're pretty well identical. I've just got to swap my hardware for the throttle linkage and a few of the fittings. One for my brake booster, and then I'm going to take my 90-degree fitting off and swap it onto the AVS2. The only difference in the AVS2 is it does have the option for fuel line on either side. Other than that, it's shiny and new. So like I said, this old 1406, I'm going to grab a rebuild kit for it and probably pick up a ultrasonic cleaner, freshen it up, and we'll keep it for the 68 F100. So I'm going to go ahead, swap all these parts over, and then we're going to run through that new carb, double check all the factory settings on it. And to do that, I just removed the top 8 screws, hold the housing on, and you've got to take 3 of these tiny little clips that like to get lost and disconnect your accelerator pump, your choke linkage, and then you can just lift the top of the carburetor off. So we're going to go ahead and check the specs on the floats, make sure the levels are set correctly. They're usually pretty close from the factory, but not always. Just saves you a bit of hassle. Might as well do it now. All right, so we got all our bits swapped over, got the carb installed. Like I said, I did go through and check all the factory settings, and the floats were off both directions. So we got those all adjusted, everything hooked up. We should be good to go. Now Edelbrock gives you the specs for the float heights. At their uppermost position, there should be 7/16 of an inch. Mine was quite a bit less. It was probably 3/8 or less, so we adjusted those just by bending the back tang. And then float drop, there should be 15/16 to an inch, and mine was probably 1.25 inches. So definitely a bit off, but you got to remember these things get bounced around pretty good in transit. So not a bad idea to check that. And like I said, just avoids having to do it later on. Keeps you from second guessing. Now the other thing I'm going to do is change out the metering rod springs. I typically run the silvers. They're about the strongest you can get. Now the general rule of thumb is whatever your vacuum reading is at idle, split that in half and go with the next closest spring. For this truck, it runs at about 20 inches at idle. So the highest we can go is the silver spring. They come shipped with the orange. So the way these work is vacuum holds the metering rods down, and when you reach your desired spring pressure, That lifts your metering rods up, allows more fuel, and that moves it into power mode. Similar to a power valve in a Holley carb. So I've got, I think, some extra silvers here. I'll throw these in. That should do it. Now, if you're like me, and we're hoping that you could reuse your calibration kit for your 1406, it doesn't work, strictly because the 1906 uses different size metering rods to obtain the various calibrations. So I'll have to go out and spend another $100 to get a different kit for that one. Never fails. So with this carb off, we can see the date code there. Edelbrock uses the Julian date system. So we know there's not 580 days in a year. So this was built on the 158th day of a year ending in 0. Now, if we look at the top, these have slotted screws. Anything 2001 and prior will have slotted. 2002 and newer will have Torx. So we can guess that this is a carburetor from midway through 2000. Now the other thing I didn't notice, this carb's been on here for quite a few years, but it is stamped Reman in a couple spots. So this carb is 23 years old. It's probably been remanned about halfway through its life. So we're probably 13 to 15 years on this rebuild. So it's definitely tired. Like I said, we will freshen it up. But I know a lot of guys say Edelbrock are junk. But I've had little to no problems with this one right up until this year. So for daily drivers, that's definitely my go-to. Now, as far as other popular options, most popular would probably be the Holley. I think this one here is 1850. This was actually on the truck when I got it, but it was hemorrhaging fuel out everywhere, so it definitely needs a rebuild. So I think I'm going to get an ultrasonic cleaner, get a kit for that one, kit for this one, rebuild both. And I'm not sure which one will end up on the 68. I might just rebuild this one and keep it as a spare or sell it. And then another option is, of course, good old Quadrajet. Now, I got this one. It actually came with the truck. I don't know much about it. It was in a rebuild box, but judging on its condition, I think the rebuilt carb that was in the box is long gone. And this one here is likely in need of a rebuild. Like I said, I don't know much about these. If you follow Mr. Heavy Chevy at all, you'll know he's a big Quadrajet guy. And they can be built to run pretty damn good for obvious reasons. You flip this over, look at the size of those secondaries. They will flow a heck of a lot of air. Now the primaries on them are quite a bit smaller, and that will get you some good fuel mileage if you can manage to keep your foot out of it. But the sound of these when you mat it to the floor and it starts sucking air can't be beat. Now the Edelbrock is similar, smaller primaries, larger secondaries, but not nearly the size of those monsters. Now the Edelbrock here is 600. I'm not too sure this one here. I don't know the specs on it. I've never really looked it up, but I'll keep this one kicking around. Not sure if I'll ever do anything with it. Now the Holleys are known to be the go-to for performance, and you certainly can't argue that. They do what they do and they do it well. But for daily driver, the Edelbrock's my favorite. So I got her primed up with fuel. Let's fire it up, see how she runs. So I'd say that's a pretty big improvement. She runs nice and smooth. We'll have to adjust the fast idle down a little bit. It's pushing a little over 1500 there, so we'll dial it back just a bit. And hopefully we should be good for another 10 years at least. If you're looking for a new carb, certainly recommend the AVS2. I'm gonna go grab a calibration kit for this one. We'll dial it in a little bit. I think it's running a little bit fat on the cruise mode, so we'll see if we can step up the mating rods, get that a little closer. And close runner up, the old 1406. Like I said, they're super reliable and great runners if you dial them in right. And obviously, Holly and the Quadrajet, nothing wrong with those. So as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.